web is vast, thousands of times larger than the visible surface web. It's like looking under the hood of the internet. It would not remain underground for long.
Welcome to NETrove. What is the dark web? The dark web is a conglomeration of websites that cannot be found on search engines or are accessed via traditional web browsers, because their location and identity are hidden through encryption tools such as Tor. Since there are various encryption tools, visitors to the site have to use the same encryption tool as the site, and most importantly know where to find the site, in order to type in the URL and access it. 2002 release of Tor. In conversations about the history of the dark web, we cannot leave out Tor, which was instrumental in creating a home for the dark web. In 2002, Tor, a private internet browsing network, was finally released to the world. Tor forever changed the face of the internet. By creating an environment in which people could browse online freely and anonymously, Tor's creators opened the door to the underbelly of the internet. Though Tor's creators had good intentions, they could not have known the widespread impact that their invention would have on criminal activity. The 1960s to 1990s highlighted a growing demand for both private internet access away from the government eye and easy accessibility of any content that one desired. Tor was the answer to both these demands. Though development of Tor began in the 1990s, it didn't fully spawn the growth of the dark web until its release in 2002. The rise of the dark web. With the release of private browsing networks like Tor, collections of dark websites and a subsequent community of followers began to emerge in full force. Though many dark websites were formed to help those living under oppressive governments push back against censorship, the temptation of having a corner of the internet where you could browse anonymously fueled a rise in the number of dark websites that hosted illegal content. 2009, the release of Bitcoin. Before cryptocurrency was invented, illegal transactions on the dark web were hard to complete, seeing as customers could potentially be located thousands of miles away and neither party wanted to risk using credit cards or PayPal for transactions because they leave paper trails. Cryptocurrency, a form of digital currency that facilitates transactions anonymously, was the answer to this persisting problem. Though different forms of cryptocurrency had been in development since the 1990s, none stuck until 2009, when one called Bitcoin was released. A man named Satoshi Nakamoto mined the first Bitcoin, effectively starting a revolution in illegal transactions online. Bitcoin solved the problem that previous versions of cryptocurrency couldn't, minus it had a special accounting ledger in place that prevented users from copying money. 2013, Silk Road shutdown. In 2011, a Gawker-affiliated blog published an exposé on the Silk Road, a dark web marketplace that made buying and selling illegal drugs as easy as buying used electronics. This exposé helped drive traffic straight to the Silk Road, quickly boosting its sales. It wasn't long until the FBI caught on and started a campaign to shut it down. In 2013, the FBI successfully completed a sting and shut down the Silk Road. This was a historic sting, seeing as the Silk Road drew close to 1 million users at one point. The Silk Road's popularity highlights how large a demand for illegal drugs was during this time, as well as how governments across the world were beginning to crack down on the dark web. 2015, Playpen shutdown. Playpen, a widely used dark website for the distribution of child pornography, amassed as many as 150,000 users at one point. Thankfully, the site was shut down in 2015 following a collaborative sting effort from the FBI and related agencies in other countries. Though the site no longer exists, its popularity shows the extent to which demand for illegal content, no matter how depraved, can exist on the dark web. Though many other newsworthy events have taken place on the dark web over the years, these are some of the highlights that show how the dark web has evolved and what kind of content it hosts. As long as there is demand for anonymity online, the dark web will be here to stay. What is the deep web? If the outermost layer is the publicly accessible internet that we all know and love, then the deep web is the second layer, which is hidden beneath the surface of the public internet and is comprised of most web pages. This is where the confusion between the deep web and dark web arises for most people. You'll see news stations spouting statistics like 96% of the internet is the dark web and is largely inaccessible to the public. These news stations fail to realize that that fact actually applies to the much more innocuous deep web. The deep web is less scary than it sounds. The deep web makes up a majority of the internet because it is all the content you can't find on search engines, such as a corporation's private database or a company's internal website pages. A thin layer of security protects the public from accessing deep web content. Consider all the different accounts that you seek to keep private, such as your online banking account or your email. These websites need to have privacy restrictions for a reason, which is why you can't Google and access somebody's bank account. These protected pages would be considered part of the deep web because search engines don't index them, therefore, hiding them from most of the public. For instance, if I am in my online banking portal, I can see a URL at the top of the page. However, if I gave you the URL to my portal, you couldn't paste it and access my account. You have to also have my account credentials to access my banking, which serves as an added security layer. Websites purposely don't index these pages for Google to find because only certain people should have access to them. How deep is the deep web? As for the size of the deep web, according to a study, it is actually 400 to 550 times bigger than the public internet. Imagine that, to access the entirety of the public internet, you would have to swim down to the bottom of an Olympic-sized swimming pool, which is around 6 feet. Now imagine that to reach the entire deep web, you would have to swim down in the Gulf of Mexico to reach the hot tub of despair, a pit of extra salty water and dissolved methane that kills any critter unlucky enough to fall inside. You would have to swim down over half a mile, 0.6 miles to be exact, to reach the hot tub of despair, a depth inaccessible by scuba divers. To put this size difference in a different perspective, this means that when someone is searching on the internet, they are only accessing 0.03%, or 1 in 3,000, of the pages available to them. For every website, there are many more web pages on the deep web. For instance, consider any password-protected websites such as Wells Fargo's online banking portal. Once a user logs into their bank account, all of the protected pages they can access, such as their checking account information or bank statement, are on the deep web because search engines cannot access these pages. Keep in mind, however, that for protected websites like online banking portals, even if a company has millions of users on its site, that doesn't mean that each user creates unique deep web pages. For instance, the Wells Fargo checking account page would be a single page on the deep web, and the numbers on that page change based on the user who logs in and looks at that page. Although there are many pages and websites on the deep web, relatively little are used for illegal purposes. Dark web and dark net. The darknet is another term that gets thrown around when talking about the dark web, so it would be wrong for us to define the dark web without talking about it. The darknet is simply the service that hosts dark web pages and services. The darknet and dark web comprise the most internal layer of the onion. The dark web is technically a subset of the deep web because it too isn't publicly accessible. According to Wired, only about 0.01% of the deep web is the dark web. While some deep websites can be accessed through private browsers such as Tor, the only way to access the dark web is through these kinds of browsers. The dark web is hidden from public view in a few ways. First, since Google doesn't index for dark web sites, you can't find any by using a search engine. Just to open a dark web site, you have to use a special browser. For some particularly secretive sites on the dark web, website owners might restrict the IP addresses that are allowed to access the site. Though you could theoretically take the same action with a public internet site, there isn't as much of a reason to do so as with a dark website.